Hello, hello. What is going on? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Hizzy Hustle. Been working a little bit on this setup here. I think people will be more impressed with the camera that I got going on now, so things will hopefully get a little bit better. Audio's good, camera's good. Let's see what we got going on today. Nothing too crazy. We're going to start with a more simplified approach to kind of how we're going to start the live stream nowadays, or consistently at least. We will start by opening up. I just have to be careful with this because I have personal information. So, new listings. We have currently. So this is for the last 24 hours in the whole Okanagan area, all the way from Penticton down to Revelstoke, essentially. Over the last 24 hours, 34 new listings, one back on the market, 27 price decreases, no increases, no under contracts, 29 sold, and 30 canceled. That's a good number. 29 sold, 34 on the market, so things are looking pretty good. That's obviously residential. We can also take a look here at our quarterly report. So Q4, sorry, is gray. Residential sales volume, not very high. So total amount of sales in the billions is just under $6 billion in comparison to COVID time, 2021, at the peak of the market when it was just absolutely crazy, is just under $10 billion for a quarterly sales volume, which is pretty crazy, right? That's just talking about the price of the actual home when it's sold. Number of residential sales in the Okanagan region. So we're very aware that there is a seasonal market here in the Okanagan. It always starts to die down in November, and it always starts to pick up in February, March. It's just the way it is. We totally understand. A lot of the people come down here for holidays and stuff like that, so who's going to be wanting to shop for a home when they're on their holidays, right? It's just, January through December, pretty much call it a write-off unless you have if you have stuff going or you have people in that situation where they need to purchase. But other than that, it's fairly quiet. 10-year average for sales volume versus your actual number for 2024. So, we're a little under, but I mean, for a 10-year average, we're relatively close. I think we'll see this line start to get a lot closer this year. Hopefully we'll see it kind of riding just underneath, if not right on it. We're expecting an uptick. I think Korea said 8 point something percent. So that would be fantastic, especially for the people who have been kind of sitting on the sidelines. Hopefully just can't be too passive. You have to be passive aggressive, right? So be ready and be able to jump and commit to whatever it is that you're looking to commit to without doing too much damage to yourself. Historic annual residential sales. So 30-year average is sitting around just over 8,000, and we're sitting just under 8,000. So all in all, not too bad. These numbers, we'll see this probably bump up a little bit. And it's just similar. Sorry, excuse me. Similar to the residential sales numbers, I would expect to see this bar kind of jump up to that line, if not slightly above. Historical new listings. So this is where the issue comes in, because we're getting so many listings on the market, but prices aren't going down. How does that work? Right? Sold price to original price ratio. Yeah, that sounds about right. So back in 2021, during the COVID time, I'm surprised that this actually isn't above 100%, because in COVID, people were, if you priced your product correctly, you were getting offers 20 to 30% over asking. It was bonkers. I don't even know how this is under 100% here. But to see about a 5% fluctuation in market price, positive, negative, that's totally fine. We're telling people, and it's pretty consistent to know that, if somebody lists their price here, you're not getting 10% off. It's just not going to happen. People are not doing it. So if you have a $100,000 house, you can't ask for a $90,000 offer. Like, it's just, maybe that's a bad example. $1 million house, $900,000 offer, right? It's just not going to happen. People will they just won't sell. They'll just sit and wait, and they'll just, why sell now at a $100,000 loss when you can sell in 5 years at potentially a profit, right? Like, it's totally situational. These are different than our monthly stats because they're quarterly. Oh no, is this the whole of 2024 then? So end of the year total stats? That can't be right. No, I guess it probably is right. Yeah, because we're around 8,000. Yeah, so maybe that's for the full year then. So yeah, that's wow, that's crazy. $1 million. That's our market. So for a single family home, $1 million. Up 5.3 from last year. Average 2 months to sell. Inventory, quite a bit. But the prices are still going up. So how does that make sense? We got 15%, 16% more inventory than last year, and we only went up. And we keep going up in price. Right? Price goes up, inventory goes up. Days to sell go up. Inventory's up, days to sell up. Oh, condo market's down. That's different though. Condo market, like we've seen in other videos, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. So yeah, that, just a little bit of a market recap. I got a little video here for us to watch.
So here's something I didn't think I'd see anytime soon. Check out this one-bedroom,
see what CBC's
saying.
saying.
Downtown Toronto. The last time it was up for rent, it was going for $2,380 a month.
So this is what I was mentioning earlier. There is a huge I don't know, divide, we'll call it, in what is being built and what is available. So traditionally, I believe single family dwellings used to make up like 50% of the new construction that's being made, and now it's like pretty much non-existent. I would almost argue that developments nowadays are townhouses, high-rises, or laneway homes, duplexes, threeplexes, fourplexes, those types of buildings. If you're not custom building a single family residence, it's not being built. Not in the Okanagan, at least. Not where I'm from. You don't, like, back in the day, you used to have full neighborhoods. When I was a kid riding around on my bike, you'd see full neighborhoods getting constructed, right? It was a subdivision. The whole place was getting built, and it was homes. Each home was different, slightly the same, but different. Like Middleton Mountain, for example. That whole area was just one by one, people just kept on building all over that mountain. Now when you see any construction startup projects, they're just townhomes. Pretty much just townhomes. That's the only way it is. Just the straight driveway in, and then garage. Your balcony's up top. You're looking straight across to the other person. No views, no nothing. It's terrible.
A month. That was in 2022. It was put back up for rent this month for $2,288 a month. Almost $100 cheaper. Here's another listing from Vancouver. 1 bed, 1 bath. In June 2023, it was renting for $25.90. Now it's $24.90. Again, $100 difference.
Rent prices are finally starting to fall after a steep and punishing climb.
Yeah, rent has been on its way down for a few months now. And here's what it looked like in Canada's major cities at the end of last year, according to data by rentals.ca, in the Vancouver area, Calgary, and in the Toronto area, which is confusing, right? Because we're in an affordability crisis in this country, especially in these cities. The cost of housing has never been higher, and yet rent, while still high, is getting cheaper.
We haven't seen rents fall at the national level like this in at least 20 years. It's a story of demand and supply.
We'll get to the demand. Now let's start with the supply.
Oh shit. I'm not on my YouTube premium account. My bad, guys. Sorry if you get some ads.
Big cities actually went up a fair bit. And if you're thinking, What are you talking about? I thought we were in a supply crisis.
Supply is extremely constrained. We're not seeing any new listings.
We have to build a lot. We have to increase supply significantly.
Now, suddenly you're saying, wait a second, there's so much supply in this particular category
Condos.
that the prices are going to plummet?
I qualify all this by saying big cities finished building a lot of one kind of supply. High-rise buildings with tons of units, both condo and
Kelowna has a specific issue with this, which is why you saw the price drops or whatever under 500,000. So that's another one as well. I mean, it's tough to say because when it comes to resale, it's going to be really, really difficult. But for those people who literally just need a place to stay and don't want to spend a lot of money, there is things available, but it's not what you want. It's never going to be what you want. These purpose-built towers that we have in Kelowna that are very available, to say the least. No one wants to live in a hotel room, essentially, right? They're meant for Airbnb, but with that ban, they're just got thrown to the sidelines, essentially.
purpose-built rental apartment buildings. In Toronto last year, more than 5,000 apartment units finally came online.
The same dynamics are in Vancouver as well, that we had a lot of construction of purpose-built rental that had begun in 2017, 2018, that's now hitting the market.
That's a lot of rentals suddenly available.
These buildings are, when they come on stream at like 300, 350, 250 units at a time. And these are owned by companies. So there is incredible pressure to fill the building up immediately.
It creates competition that you've got these new units online. And
it's actually another really good point to make as well, is that you now have a lot of people who are just normal people who have these condo investments or whatever, and they're now competing with a bunch of these real estate trust fund investors or whatever it is, and now those people are being very much pressured to fill the buildings, make sure those residents have people in them, create some profit, even if it is at a little bit of a loss. And because they're doing that, and they're able to do that because they have such a financial backing in a different way, or corporations have different ways of getting money versus the average person, right? So if you need $3,000 to cover your mortgage, you need to make $3,000 on rent, or you're paying for it, right? They don't have any way of subsidizing that with anything else, unless you figure that out on your own. But the corporations will essentially hurt the little people now too, because they're not able to make as much money.
The building owner who wants to rent them out,
Which all makes sense. More units brings prices down. But where are all these buildings coming from? Well, these are projects that were started years ago, when interest rates and building costs were low, and when government policy encouraged these types of builds.
and even before the pandemic, we'd seen prices and rents rise in a lot of communities going back to about 2016 or so.
To use any reference prior to COVID, I think is it's just really deceiving, because we had 10 years worth of inflation in like 6 months. So to say that rent was increasing before and now it's, increasing after, I think that's just it's such a terrible example to use, in my opinion.
And that created the conditions to get new buildings started. So part of that was economic conditions, and part of it was policies, like the federal government making more mortgage loans available for apartment construction.
And while 2016 feels like a lifetime ago, Trump won his first election, Brexit became real.
Crazy,
Brad and
man.
Angelina broke.
I think about how much time has passed since 2016, which, by the way, best year in the NBA ever. There will never be a better year in the NBA than 2016. Cavs versus Warriors. That rivalry, it's giving me goosebumps right now. I'm just thinking about it. It's giving me goosebumps. Man, I love that. But what a wild time it's been since now and then. That's almost a decade ago. Isn't that crazy? I was working on the oil rigs during that time. I was a roughneck. I remember being up in camp and having to pack up and head out right after a 12-hour shift that I worked all night long just to move camp and then move the rig. And I got like no sleep. I remember this whole ordeal that we were at. And I remember being in, I think it was like November or something like that. It was just before winter, right around election time, that whole situation. And I was watching it and I was like, I can't believe this is actually happening. I remember this all so clearly.
These buildings
2016,
can take
man.
about 6,
Those were the
7,
days.
8 years on average from start to finish. And back then, there was
I was a second year electrician. Third year? I can't even
a lot
remember.
of demand for these types of high-rise rental builds.
We have seen in 2023 and 2024 a lot of buildings come online that were planned, almost a decade ago.
But there's another side of the supply part of this equation, and that's condos, because a ton more of those were also completed last year. 30,000 units in Toronto alone.
It was a record high. The average over the last 10 years is about 20,000 units, so it's like 10,000 units higher than what's considered to be average.
That's a lot of condos being added to the market, but what happens when you can't sell them? Well, you might rent them. You see, a lot of condos aren't bought by people actually planning to live in them. They're often investment properties. 65% of condos under 600 square feet are bought just to make money, because for a while there, pre-sale condos were kind of a great way to turn a big profit. You'd buy a condo before.
People made a lot of money doing this stuff because with the way that the market used to work, and especially if you bought any pre-sales just before the COVID time, because if you were able to dump all that stuff before 2021 or 2022, like, you were laughing, right? Absolutely laughing. You killed a profit. Like, you were walking out of there feeling like you did something good with your money.
For construction at a decent price.
And a lot of these people didn't even have to make a payment. They only had to make, I believe, you only have to pay the deposit until, what was the, I can't look it up right now. I got too much stuff going on, but
And the market was
you get what I'm trying to say. There is a point in which you have to make your first payment. So some of these people essentially could make a profit off of their pre-sales without even having to put any of their own money into it other than the deposit or the kind of initial down payment, right?
Appreciating so quickly that by the time that condo was finished, maybe you could sell it for double what you bought it for.
Exactly.
Easy money. But in the last couple of years, the math on all of that has changed. Construction costs are higher. Development fees are higher. Interest rates are higher.
Too much bureaucracy. We need to, like, around the Okanagan, it's pretty much 30 cents of every dollar is gone to some government agency, some type of bureaucratic process that needs somebody else to sign off on things. Approvals take way too long to get. Like, this is an ongoing issue, and this has been an ongoing issue ever since, well, it's just been getting worse and worse ever since I joined the trade, right? I started my electrical apprenticeship back in 2013. And ever since then, it was just, one thing after another thing, another requirement, another safety precaution, right? Like arc fault or receptacles in the master bedroom. It doesn't seem like much, but it's just another bill. And when you $5 and $10 people to death, it adds up, right? $5 to $10, 10 times, it's $100. Keep doing that. And then construction, it gets a lot worse, a lot quicker, because there's no just $5 and $10. It's $100 and $500.
Higher. It all went up, meaning that healthy profit that you could take right to the bank got gobbled up. And what seemed like a great investment might actually have ended up costing you money.
Correct.
You had a lot of kind of mom and pop investors who bought pre-construction condos 7 or 8 years
so
ago.
much.
Now have taken possession of them, and they don't entirely know what to do with them.
New condo sales in the Toronto area dropped to the lowest quarterly total since the financial crisis.
Toronto's particularly bad for this. Listings are at record highs. Sales are at a 30-year low. And if you can't sell, what then?
There's nobody living in a townhouse or a house that wants to move into a 455 square foot dog crate condo, right? They never planned on living there, no one at all.
A lot of times they're saying, well, you know, I'm going to rent this thing out, right? Because my other options aren't looking.
Imagine you're in one of these situations where you put your entire retirement investment into a property that you thought was going to be an income generator, a profit generator, and then you're in the hole before it even starts. What's your option? You have a house. Do you sell your house? Do you rent your house and then move into the condo? Do you sell the condo at a loss? Like, what do you do, right? It's crazy. I feel so bad for some of these people.
Fantastic.
Bingo. Those condo units end up flooding the rental market. And now, in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, growth in unit completions is actually outpacing population growth.
That means you have more supply that could potentially be available per capita, per person. So that's been trending upwards pretty dramatically.
And here's the thing. This massive expansion of supply is only half the explanation.
Sorry. Next time I'll make sure I'm on my YouTube Premium account.
Still the exact audience and industries
Annoying.
For.
This is my channel. Pay me for the ads.
Population grew by about 3 million people in the last 3 years. And that's a pretty
insane.
central development in this whole housing crash.
The Canadian rental market reached a record high last month.
Another record high last month.
A record high in January.
So in the GTA, you know, the population was growing by about, 9 people for every studio apartment, right? And you can't really fit 9 people in a studio apartment, right? So that creates these tensions.
You can see if we look at Ontario, just how much condo rent climbed in tandem, basically with the rise in population.
That's crazy.
The dip was the pandemic. But these unsustainable prices were a big part of the reason the government pulled a U-turn on its immigration policy.
Today we're announcing that we will reduce the number of immigrants
Too late,
we
man.
bring in over.
And this might be a hot button topic for a lot of people. I have no issue with immigrants. But God, like, they were pulling in way too many, way too quickly. We weren't able to handle it. The housing wasn't able to handle it. You saw the stats right there. 9 people for every studio apartment in Toronto. That's crazy.
Which will result in a pause in the population growth.
That backpedal on Canada's immigration policy is a big factor contributing to weakening rental demand, given newcomers do represent a large share of the renter base. The average newcomer has historically rented for the first 5 to 10 years living in Canada.
That's totally true. But right now, you're screwing them over even worse because there's so much, like, you have to pay so much to live somewhere. At least now, with things slowing down and with the increase in inventory or whatever, it gives people the chance to maybe take a breath and get their feet under them and, you know, find out how much things are actually going to cost. Like, this is not a bad thing. Yes, it's a bad thing when it comes to the people who are losing money because they made the investment in the wrong time or whatever. But this is not a bad thing as a whole. We need to have some type of a reset. And in order for a reset to happen, unfortunately, bad things will happen to some people. It's nature of the beast, right? It's really unfortunate. And it's the same way that I feel. Like, if the housing market were to correct and the house that I'm in right now goes down to a price that I think before the pandemic or whatever it should be worth, I'm out a lot of money, right? But that doesn't necessarily hurt me very much because I'm in a situation where you're able to kind of move laterally through this type of turmoil, right? Like, you just kind of, you've taken a hit on one side and you just kind of move through and then you just keep on kind of going afterwards, right? Like, you just have to get through it, unfortunately. And this is where we're at, I think, in this whole housing correction. Like, people are going to suffer only if you have to sell, if you have to move. Because if you can stay where you are and you can make it through these troubling times, this turbulence, right, then in the long run you'll be okay. It's just a crappy time right now, and we need to see some corrections. So
this incredible boom in population for 3 years is now going to turn into a substantial bust.
And if you want to see the effects of these policy changes playing out in real time, just look at the cap on international students that was announced at the beginning of last year.
The federal government will cap the number of student permits over the next 2 years.
That's not the issue.
Canada, there were 45% fewer international students enrolled in colleges and universities in the fall of 2024 compared to the year before. Places like London, Ontario, and Kitchener that have high student populations are also seeing rents fall fast.
It's not a coincidence that the communities where we're seeing rents drop the fastest are communities that have high international student populations.
And there is another factor here that's playing a role in the decrease in demand in big cities.
The cost of living in Canada is sick.
Does someone want to explain to me why Canada is so expensive, but it just doesn't even make sense?
Consider this. Nationally, the unemployment rate was
Carbon
6.7% in December, up from 5% just 2 years earlier. But in Toronto and the surrounding areas, it was a lot higher, 8.4%.
Say what you want about the price on carbon, but when you tax a corporation, I'm sorry to say this, I don't know who needs to hear this, but the corporation will not foot the bill. It does not happen. Taxes go up, profit margins stay the same or go up. How does that happen? Price increases. Who has to pay the price? The consumer. Right? So the idea that this price on carbon is actually putting more money into the economy is just, it's so disingenuous, just because even if it's true, they're not doing good things with the money. So where does that leave us?
December. And for younger people, it was even higher than that. 14.4% across the country. And the younger you are, the more likely you are to be a renter.
And so with that in mind, it's very possible that the labor
There's
market
people my
could
age.
be-
People my age already think that they are out of, I'm 30, right? And they think that they're unable to afford a house. It's just out of the picture. Like, and me and my wife are thinking about having kids, right? A lot of my friends have their first kids and stuff like that. 20 years from now, how is that going to shape out? How are people going to be able to afford their first homes? Are they even going to be able to? Like, are you supposed to plan to essentially incorporate your children into your retirement plan? Like, you just have to, you know what I mean? It's crazy.
putting downward pressure on rental demand as few younger people move out onto their own into most likely what would be a rental.
So yes, maybe more people are staying home with their parents
They
or
are.
splitting the bills with roommates. In British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec,
Roommates were always a
listings
thing.
for
It's
shared
not even a-
accommodations have
I
shot
don't
up
know.
nearly 50% in the last year.
I can't afford a one bedroom by myself, I don't think. So if you need a roommate,
I'm trying to find a new roommate.
Now, cheaper rent doesn't mean cheap rent. Those units I showed you at the beginning are still well over $2,000 for one bedroom. But a lot of these trends we've been seeing do look like they will continue this year. More building completions and population decline to come. So if you are a renter, this year might not be a bad time to look around.
Well, that's scary. Well, there it is. Crazy. Crazy. Well, I mean, I feel like I've said everything that I needed to say on that one. It's unfortunate, but it's good and it's necessary. People in the Okanagan, like, for example, rent went up so fast in such a short period of time that some people who had renters for a long period of time, say you had a 2-bedroom home or whatever, like one of those little heritage homes here in Vernon, and you had the same renter for the last 10 years into the pandemic. Rent increases went up so fast that if you were to have the same renter, because you can only raise, I believe it's 1.5% every year is the rent cap max when you have a tenant. So the best possible way for you to make money off of your profit, because you were like, $1,500 for this rental that's worth $2,500 or something like that, right? Like it's just insane. It wasn't even worth keeping because you can't get your renter out. You can't evict somebody to bring somebody in new so that you can charge them a higher rent, right? The only two options that you got in that situation is evict to live in it on your own, because you have to. It's the only way that you can do it is either you or an immediate family member that needs to be in it. And I believe if the tenant were to try, you would have to prove to them that that's actually the case. And then two is you sell. It's the only two ways that you were able to make your profit back. So yeah, with the way things went with that one, it's good. It's unfortunate, but I think we either need to see a dip in the price to come back up, which I think in the roundabout way would be more harmful, because causing a dip in prices like that will just it'll bounce back up so much higher, because when people see prices drop, that's when they're gonna bounce, right? It's just gonna be the way it is, and then there'll be a lot of competition. Prices will just jump right back up. So what I'm hoping to see over the next kind of 3 to 5 years is just steady sales, steady listings, no price increases. We're just kind of floating at this point, and we just let the market trends of the year dictate kind of where we are, plus or minus 2 to 5%. And then with that, I think it'll give a lot of people a little bit more confidence in what's happening over an extended period of time, and then maybe a little bit more of a foundation for a plan, right? Because if you know that things aren't going to go crazy for the next decade, maybe you can get ahead. So anyways, thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully this is a good one. We'll see what comes up tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of the day, guys.